Hi, I'm Emma Evans of Kent Therapy Clinic, and I'm here to talk to you about a technique that I've discovered works just as well online as it does with face-to-face clients. I don't know about you, but I'm always looking for different ways to work with my clients online, given the current set of situation, in the country and globally. We need to be able to adapt the way that we are working. So this technique is quite akin to inner child work. Now, ordinarily as a hypnotherapist, I would do inner child work in a state of trance. The client would go into hypnotherapy and then I would gently guide them towards a small child, and that child would be them. And I would then get them to discuss with me what the child needed, how the child was feeling, and anything that the child wished to say, and then anything that the adult wished to say to the child. It's an incredibly restorative way of working. It is quite emotional, and sometimes it can uncover subconscious drivers why certain behaviours exist. Once the adult really sort of tunes into listening to that inner child, then things quite often are uncovered that are not normally uncovered just in a talking session. So I wanted to be able to do this with clients, but I also wanted to be able to do it in a counselling capacity, because sometimes the work that we do hypnotically isn't appropriate to do online. Now, I have done inner child work online successfully with people, but if you are more of a traditional type therapist and you prefer talking ways of working, and you also don't mind embracing doing something quite creative with the client, then you can kind of do an inner child in a different way. So I'm going to demonstrate this to you today. And this is with working with photographs from childhood. And it'll make sense when we start to do it, of how it actually unfolds. Now, I am going to show you with a photograph of myself. And bear in mind that I'm a already, well-seasoned counsellor and hypnotherapist and psychotherapist. And so I'm used to therapy myself. But this photograph is actually one which I stumbled upon the other day when looking for other photographs. And it's curious that I didn't actually throw this one away. I'll explain all when we get there. So, see you in a bit, and I will let you know how I will work with this specific photograph, and I hope that it really helps you with your clients. It's a fun way to work. It's actually really very powerful. Okay, so here we are with my photograph of my child. Now, this is me, sat on the beach, and I was probably about 3 in this photograph. Now, I don't have much conscious recollection. Well, I don't have any conscious recollection of this day on the beach. What you might find when you have your clients is that they actually do have some kind of recollection to an event, or maybe they will bring a photograph of themselves at a birthday party, on a holiday, perhaps lined up with grandparents or parents or friends. And any of the photographs that they choose to bring to you are exactly the right photograph to choose. It doesn't actually matter even if it's of a family pet. What we're looking for is the emotional responses that are then brought up by the photograph. Now, as I said, this one I I think probably a family member might have given me this photograph at one point. The interesting thing, which I initially thought when I chose this photograph, was it was in a pile of a load of other photographs. I could have chosen a lot of other ones, but this one I was drawn to, mainly because if you think about it from an adult perspective, in this day and age, you would have deleted this photograph of any child sitting on a beach because she's got her eyes closed. And I just thought, as an aside, that was an interesting kind of thing that, you know, we delete an awful lot out of our lives now, and memories would be lost. And I wouldn't have the opportunity of going back and looking at this photograph had it been taken on any form of digital camera or a camera phone. So just as an aside, it's an interesting thing. I wonder how much of history we delete out of our lives because we want everything to look perfect. So I might have that conversation with a client had they brought this particular photograph to me. So how we're going to work with the photograph is we're going to be asking the client, and obviously the client in this situation is me, but we're going to ask the client to look at the photograph and tell us how they feel. Now, we can do this in one of two ways, and normally I will try to go with both, a bit of both way in the session. So we ask the client to tell us, how old do you think the child is in this photograph? So I think that this child maybe is about aged 3. Okay, so we've got a kind of idea, and you'll have to excuse my writing because my writing is rubbish, but it's about age 3. Okay. Now, I have no conscious recollection, as I said, about this particular photograph of what beach it was, where I was. I know it wouldn't have been abroad because we didn't go abroad until I was much, much older. We didn't have the money. People didn't, did they, in those days? They didn't have the money to go abroad. So we're going to look at this from an adult perspective. And I'm going to ask the client to give me a list of words or feelings that this child in this particular photograph presents. So in the adult self, me now as an adult, I look at this child and I feel sadness. I feel she might be lonely. I feel as though she has no friends. Again, that makes me feel sad. What else comes up for me in this particular photo? I would say as an adult, I would question the toy just left on the sand and how symbolic that might be in some way. I think it's Pinocchio. When I think about Pinocchio, that really brings up a lot of memories. And they're memories that if I had me as a client, I would really begin to explore. So, Pinocchio used to tell lies. And lies really heavily focus in this child's life. There's a lot of lies that are going on around this child that as an adult, she's going to need to work through. Okay, so, and she has worked through. But for the purpose of the demonstration, we're not going to talk about what has happened afterwards. We're going to talk about what's happening in this moment with this photograph of this child. Now, from the child's perspective, how would we think that the child is feeling in this particular photograph. If we scroll into the photograph of the child and really look in depth, she looks heavy under the eyes. She looks tired. She looks quite fragile. Now, I'm sure if you were looking at this photograph of a child, as you are at the moment, you may be thinking different things, but it's not about what the therapist thinks, it's about what the client thinks. So whatever the client brings to you, however they process their photograph, it's really interesting, and you should work with whatever it is that they give you. So for example, if a client of mine said, the child looks fragile, I would ask, and what does that represent? What does that mean to you? So let's explore that in a little bit more detail. So I feel as though fragile is a word that's come up there. I think her feelings could be hurt. By adults. And those feelings of fragile could also be to do with her sense of self. Perhaps she felt lonely and on her own a lot of the time. Now, why was she on her own, is what I would be asking. Why did she feel as though she was on her own a lot of the time? Well, her parents went to work. And they worked very hard. But in that, the child at age 3 had to be looked after by a lot of other people. So quite often the child had periods of time where she was looked after by other people, but actually she just wanted to be in her own home. So that tiredness, this is where this tiredness comes in. This links very nicely into that. The child also feels quite physically tired. And what I mean by that is that she feels as though she just wants to be scooped up and cuddled in. So me, the adult me, it feels as though I would really like to cuddle her. Now, does that mean that she didn't get any cuddles when she was little? Probably not. But how does that make me feel as an adult? It comes back to the sad feeling. I feel sad that the child feels as though she really needs that physical sense of relief that can come from physical touch. Now, at this juncture, I might ask the client, okay, so would you like to, in your mind, connect directly with that child. Perhaps you'd like to imagine that you're on that beach and you're able to go up to the child. Perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself. Would you like to talk to the child, ask the child any questions? Maybe you'd like to pull her in for a lovely big hug. But whatever you'd like to do is completely and utterly great. And the client might say, I'd really like to give that child, that little version, a hug. And that's fine. You can allow the client to do that in the safety of their own mind. And I'd like to then explore with the client what they'd like to tell the child about themselves from the adult perspective. And I might say to that child, that age 3 version of me, that no matter what happens in life, no matter what happens with other people, no matter what happens with regards to their people lying around them, no matter what happens, she's going to grow up to be successful. She's going to be able to work her way through all of those things which affected her when she was little and small. She doesn't always remain as that 3-year-old self. She grows up and she's able to self-comfort, self-soothe, give herself a mental hug from time to time. Anything that was within this child's childhood and younger years which needs sorting out does get sorted out. So I would like her to know that she's loved, that she doesn't always remain on her own, that she fills her life up with other people eventually when it's her own choice to do so. And that all of that time spent playing by herself on her own eventually means that she's very self-sufficient and can actually move into the future being able to do that alone. And that aloneness doesn't always mean weakness. It doesn't always mean that there aren't other people around, that you can't make yourself happy, because you can. And I'd like to tell her that she's capable, perfectly capable, and she gets a great deal of confidence in doing things well in her life. So as you can see, there's an awful lot of work that you can do with just one photograph. Now, with a photograph of maybe family members, you may discover that the client talks about the different family members in detail. This can happen over 1 or 2 sessions. It can take a few more sessions than just one, and I'm oversimplifying this, obviously, for the purpose of demonstration. And obviously I am an adult and I have worked with these sort of things in my own therapy over the years. And I've worked through all of these issues and come out of the other side. And this is really just a demonstration to you to see how you can work with your client in massively creative ways. So what I would do at the end of a session is I would ask the client to finish the session with one statement that they would like their adult self to go back to tell the child about something that is positive in the future. So my statement to this child is that you grow up strong and are an amazing parent. So always let the client finish the session with something that is very, very empowering for them. Okay. Now, as I said, this can take, it can take a few sessions because, there's lots of different spirals off that can happen as a result of doing this kind of work. I hope that this demonstration has been useful, and I hope that it's actually enabled you to see one of the very creative ways that we can work. And I hope that you use it with your clients. What I suggest you do is that you actually you do it first with yourself. So, grab an old photograph and just sit with that photograph on a blank piece of paper and do as I've done. Look at things from the child's perspective, look at things from the adult's perspective, and then always end giving yourself some form of really very positive affirmation that you can take off into the future. So here we are at the end of the demonstration of creative work with childhood photos. I hope that you've learnt something new today, and that it's something that you can take into either client work online or client work face-to-face in the future. Now, just a little bit about the mechanics of it. If you are going to do this work online with your clients and they have got the opportunity of actually setting their camera up so that you can see the photograph and the piece of paper at the same time, then obviously that is more beneficial because you can kind of talk to them and ask them questions as you go along. If they don't have that facility, don't worry about that. They can merely show you the photograph to begin with. You can get a good idea of what it's like in your mind. And then as they go through, get them just to be doing a work on a piece of paper in front of them with the photograph there. And then at the end, you may be able to get them to show you the piece of paper with whatever it is that they've written on. That part of it isn't really that important. It's not as important for you to see it as it is for them. But actually, if they can set their camera up so that they're actually facing the piece of paper, then it's just a little bit more interesting in the way that works. So I hope this video finds you very well and happy. And I hope that you're busy, and please look out for future videos that I'm going to do. I'm going to do a workshop on working online, getting leads and clients and things like that from Facebook and social media. So look out for that one, and I will talk to you all soon. Take care.